Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to talk about intonation. If you've ever had an English lesson with me about accent reduction, you'll know that intonation is something which is very important in British culture and society. The problem is that British people are so polite that we don't often say what we mean or mean what we say. Everything is kind of put under this blanket of nicety or niceness. And it's a problem, even for us. So how do you know then if someone that you're talking to is being sincere? The only way you really know is by listening to their intonation, because intonation can mean sarcasm, irony, truth, as well as giving you a hidden message. For example, if you ask me, "How are you?" you will always get the same answer, "Fine." And you? But how I say that answer is going to really tell you how I am. Because if I say fine, or no, fine, or no, well, fine, I suppose, and the last answer, you can hear that I'm really not fine. So the only way that you'll pick that up is by listening to how I say the words. The problem with this is that I expect you to know from my intonation that I'm not fine. And then you could ask me things like, "Oh, what's wrong?" Or "Are you sure?" Or "Doesn't sound like you're okay." So you see, if you don't recognize what I'm saying with the word fine, yeah, fine, I suppose, then there's a problem. There's a problem because I'm trying to tell you that I'm not okay, and that problem probably is something which is not picked up. And then in a business setting, if you continue to say, "Oh, beautiful day, isn't it? Oh, and how lovely," and everything, then of course I'm going to get more upset because I've kind of told you that I'm not fine, which is a way to explain, leave me alone, or don't ask me. So it's really important that you tune in to intonation and hear what we're trying to say. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this, but the easiest and best way is to recognize how other people use intonation. We use intonation sometimes to show concern for people. We use intonation to give you those hidden messages, as I mentioned a moment ago. Now, you might think this is just the language of broadcasters, but it's not. We use it a lot in very polite personal conversations, and we often use it to stress concern for people and situations. We're going to listen now to Rebecca Jones, who's a BBC News presenter, and I want you to hear her intonation as she explains some things from the news. Now, she's talking to different people on the news here, but it's been edited so you only get to hear her voice. So let's listen to her intonation and hear what she does with different sentences and words.
Now, the head of Britain's most powerful employers' body, the CBI, has warned that a no-deal outcome will severely disrupt businesses. Caroline Fairbairn is urging politicians to back the Prime Minister's draft agreement to take no deal off the table. Let's cross live now to Nina Warhurst, who is at the CBI conference in London for us this morning. And Nina, we know that Mrs May is going to talk about curbs to EU migration, but how much is that at odds with business looking for workers? The General Medical Council are urgently checking the qualifications of about 3,000 foreign doctors after it was discovered a woman had been practicing as a psychiatrist for 22 years with no qualifications. All South Western railway services into London Waterloo have been cancelled because of overrunning engineering work. The company is telling passengers not to travel this morning and says journeys across its entire network may be cancelled, delayed or revised all day.
Right, so you can hear there that she was stressing particular words. Trains being cancelled, for example, in the last clip. What she's doing here is she's stressing concern, and the same with the psychiatrist. She's saying a woman practiced for 22 years. So she's kind of highlighting key words there, and she's stressing them to give you the importance of the message. Another thing that you might have noticed about her voice is how she puts it up and down when she's talking all the time. And this is to keep your attention, because if she spoke just with a plain voice to tell you that a psychiatrist had been practicing for 22 years, in English that just doesn't work. As I mentioned a moment ago, the words are the least thing that you have to worry about. The intonation tells everything, and she's done a very good job there of showing you the importance of the stories by highlighting the key words and putting intonation in place so that you can hear what she's trying to tell you. Now, I have to say that although she's using very nice intonation here and she's reading very, very well, she's probably exaggerating just a little bit because she's putting too much of her personality into the story by telling you what's important, because she's chosen the key words, the psychiatrist, for example, of 22 years. Now, that's fine in a personal conversation because you want to say exactly what you want to demonstrate is important for you. But for a newscaster to do that would be a little bit too personal, because they're supposed to be objective and not biased. But she clearly, I'm not saying she's biased, but her presentation style would show that she's concerned about certain parts of the story. So the best place to begin with intonation is to realize that it's very, very important. How you do it and to what extent you do it is largely up to you. Highlighting keywords by putting them up a little bit is a very good place to begin. Unless you're doing presentations, in which case to begin at the top and bring your voice down with each sentence, bringing it to a close at the end. Now you'll see that, or you'll hear rather, that Rebecca is very good at that. What she's doing there is she's putting her voice up at the beginning of the sentences and she's bringing it down. But sadly for her, she's also highlighting key things which she thinks are very important. It's a little bit dramatic, and I would perhaps assume that Rebecca's been to acting school or has been trained to speak in this way, because compared to other newscasters, they don't quite use the same intonation as her. But she is very good, and one of the reasons why I like her is because she can really keep my attention. Whereas other newscasters, when they speak, they're a bit bland. They don't really tell me very much. Is intonation important in your culture? How do you communicate? Is it only with words? Because if you're learning English, particularly British English, you need to understand this intonation thing. And American English, it's not so important because they're very blunt. Same with Australian English. They are very direct with their words. But in British English, this intonation thing really is very, very important. And if you don't use it, you might find people getting angry with you and you won't know why. It's because if you speak without emotion, people can't read you. And you might find them saying things like, well, what do you mean? That doesn't sound nice. Especially if you're not smiling when you're talking, because it sounds a bit, well, just a little bit hard for English people to hear. Being British, I've heard comments made by other British people about the way other people speak. They make comments like, "Oh, I don't like her because she doesn't seem very friendly. I don't like her because she never smiles. Oh, I don't like her because she's Eastern European and she looks miserable." These are stereotypes, and unfortunately, that's where stereotypes come from. They come from simple things like not using intonation, not using the present perfect properly. So even though you communicate very well, it could be that you need some intonation just to help you out there a little bit. The next time you're watching a British movie or anything British, I want you just to hear how they intonate. On radio and television, breathing is often brushed out, but they can't change intonation because it's a very necessary part of stories, and it's a necessary thing for us to do. If you speak without intonation, people are going to think that you're a little bit rude, and at job interviews and these things is not going to come across very well. If intonation is new for you and you have a job interview coming up, don't worry too much about it, because instead of intonating, you can smile, because people will feel your warmth if you smile. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you smile, of course, when giving bad news. It would be a little bit strange if you're smiling. "Yeah, I had a downhill skiing accident in 2014, Yeah. Some people do that, but for me personally, it would be a little bit strange. But in the positive notes, just make sure that you're smiling a little bit, because it'll make your voice tender and warm. And that's what people like, It all sounds a bit fake. And when it comes to British politeness, it is. But it's so much part of our culture that I don't think anybody is able to escape it. When I think of my neighbour, for example, when I meet her, "Oh, lovely day, isn't it? Oh, yeah, better than yesterday." I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh, stupid cow, leave me alone." But I think that's because I've noticed how fake this all is. But many people here actually don't. Many people here use politeness as their usual way of living. It's only because I've travelled and lived in other countries that I can see how weird that we actually are with this. Anyway, I'm going a bit off topic, so I'm going to stop talking about intonation now, and maybe we can pick up on other ways of speaking in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this. See you soon. Bye bye.